Welcome friends to the Secret Doctrine webinar. We are in our second class in this series. This is the second series where we are exploring stanzas 4, 5 and 6. And today we are going to go through the second part of the stanza 4. Stanza 4 is the stanza where the manifestation of the gods or the Anchohans or celestial beings is explained. And we saw the first part last week. So today we will continue with the Shloka 4 within this stanza. This was the army of the voice, the mother of the divine septenary. The sparks of the seven are subject to and the servants of the first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and the seventh of the seven. These sparks are called spheres, triangles, cubes, lines, and modelers. For thus stands the eternal Nidana, the Oi Hai Ho, which is a permutation of Oyaohu. So before we go into HPB's commentaries, let's see a few things here. First, there is a description of what is called the army of the voice, which we are going to explore, and a series of sparks that are subject to a septenary. Now, these sparks are given certain names, and at the end it says, for thus stand the eternal Nidana. Nidana is a Sanskrit word that means causation. So a Nidana is a chain of causes and effects, one after the other, one cause producing an effect, and that effect becoming a cause. So what this shloka is talking about is this chain of beings in a hierarchy of beings which are all connected, which are all emanations from a previous one, as we are going to see, and this is the eternal chain of causation. Now, in our previous series, we have seen this word Oyaohu. Oyaohu is a term that is used for several related universal principles, but we could say, generally speaking, that it refers to the logos. Now, Oi Ha Ho, it says, is a permutation of Oyaohu, and we can look at Oi Ha Ho as the manifested or active aspect of the logos. So let's see what Blavatsky explains about this. First, she says, this shloka gives again a brief analysis of the hierarchies of the Anchohans, or the conscious intelligent powers in nature. Remember, we said that behind all the laws of nature, the esoteric philosophy sees intelligent powers which bring order into the universe. So this shloka gives a brief summary of this hierarchy of celestial beings that we explored in the first part of this series, in the first part of stanza 4. And then the shloka says, this was the army of the voice, the mother of the divine septenary. That I added there the mother of, because in another rendering of the shloka, which is at the beginning of the Secret Doctrine, it says the mother of the seven, and here in this rendering it just says the divine septenary. But the voice, as we are going to see, is a feminine aspect of the logos. So it's important to keep in mind that the voice is the mother of this divine septenary. Blavatsky explains the army of the voice is the prototype of the host of the logos. When Blavatsky says prototype, she normally refers to the seed of whatever comes next. The seed in the sense of the spiritual cause of whatever comes next. So the army of the voice is the spiritual cause of the host of the Logos. Or the Word, called in the secret doctrine, the Logos is called in the secret doctrine the one number issued from no number, the one eternal principle. So we have explored this in our previous class. There are two ones. There is the unmanifested one, which is eternal, and then there is the manifested one, which is eternal in essence because it's an expression of the unmanifested, but is temporary in its expression. So many times you will see that there is a vague reference to the one, to the Logos, where we are, you have to see according to the context whether it refers to the unmanifested or to the manifested aspect. So Blavatsky says the esoteric theogony, the word theogony is means theo is the divine, and goni comes from Genesis, so it's the genesis of the celestial beings. So the esoteric theogony begins with the one manifested, therefore not eternal in its presence and being, if eternal in its essence, which is what I just explained, proceeding from the voice, the feminine Vak. Vak is a goddess in Hindu mythology, and is the goddess of sound and speech. So she says that the manifested one, the manifested Logos, proceeds from the voice, from the feminine Logos. So we will see this. This is a term closely connected with the mystery of sound and speech as an effect and corollary of the cause, the divine thought. You see how the subject of cause and effect is predominant here, because this particular shloka talks about the nidana, this chain of causation. So she says that sound and speech are the effects of thought, in the case of divine principles, of divine thoughts. So we could say that the divine thought is the Father, allegorically speaking. A thought is something that exists but is not yet manifested. When we think of something, it's still in the realm of the subjective aspect of the universe, let's say. There is no external expression. So the thought is the first thing to appear, and then that thought may express itself in the form of speech through our voice. So we have the thought, which is first, and then the voice, which expresses that thought. So the voice is the mother, and this divine thought could be interpreted in this context as the unmanifested Logos. So when the divine thought expresses itself through the voice, we have the army of the voice. The divine thought within the divine thought is the plan for the manifestation of the universe. The voice is the process of manifesting that universe, that plan, of making it concrete from the highest spiritual planes to the lower physical plane. Now this happens through what is called the army of the voice. We could say this is the speech, these are the words that are the army of the voice. Now the army of the voice are the first divine primordial seven. So it's like the first sounds, 7 sounds uttered by the voice are these 7 hierarchies of beings, the primordial 7. And then from these primordial 7, as we explored in our previous class, come all the different builders of the universe, the different manifested celestial beings of of various degrees, which are the builders. Now, we could say that the army of the voice and the host of the Logos, which are the builders, they, in their collectivity, they represent the word. The words that, either the word in an abstract sense or the words as independent powers that express the divine thought. And the word is the Son. So we have thought, we have voice, we have speech or words, the Father, the Mother, and the Son. So this is the allegorical figures that this shloka is using. Now, Blavatsky brings an interesting aspect of this because, as she explained elsewhere, anything that happens on the cosmic level finds its reflection at the level of a human being. So she brings this idea of these three principles and the powers behind these three principles to the level of human beings. She says, as beautifully expressed by P. Christian, the word spoken by as well as the name of every individual largely determine his future fate. There is an esoteric science of names and words and the meaning of them. Each of the words, as we are going to see, is composed of letters, and the letters have hidden a certain power. So the idea is that a name contains in itself a certain power, a certain characteristic because of the sounds associated with it. So this author, P. Christian, explains about this. When our soul or mind creates or evokes a thought, this is the first step, the appearance of a thought, the representative sign of that thought is self-engraved upon the astral fluid. That is referring to a thought form. As soon as we think of something, we produce a form which is formed on the astral plane and the mental plane too. He says this astral fluid, he's using astral in a general sense for all this kind of matter that is not physical, is not what we call material. So this astral fluid is the receptacle, so to say, the mirror of all the manifestations of being. So the word, the verbum, or the speech of every person is quite unconsciously to himself a blessing or a curse. This is why our present ignorance is often fatal to us. In later theosophical literature, there has been more studies about the idea of thought forms and their effect. But in one of the Mahatma letters, written by one of HPV's teachers, the master says, with our thoughts, with our desires, even with our words, we are constantly creating these entities which gather around us, and they create an atmosphere, a kind of psychic atmosphere or psychological atmosphere around us, which interacts and affects everything that we do, every person we relate to. So according to the quality of our thoughts is the quality of this atmosphere through which we relate to the world. So this is why the author says that because we are as humanity, we are unconscious of this power. People, for the most part, don't pay attention to their thoughts. They think that all they have to take care of is their actions, but it's perfectly fine to nourish negative thoughts or emotions. Now, from an esoteric perspective, it is not. The thoughts and emotions are actual forces. Now, these forces, these sounds, in the esoteric philosophy are connected to entities, to intelligences. When we utter a word, we produce a sound, and there are elemental energies that are attracted according to the intention, to the feelings behind, and to the sounds. So Blavatsky explains, in the metaphysics of old, intelligent beings, or rather intelligences, are inseparably connected with every sense or function, whether physical or mental. So even our actions are attracting a certain kind of elemental forces, elemental intelligences. Iamblichus, who was a Neoplatonist, would say that when, for example, if we get up in the morning and we get up as soon as we wake up, that action attracts a certain kind of intelligence to our body that makes it responsive to what our thoughts want. But if we stay in a lazy state, after we wake up, then that action attracts a different kind of intelligences that makes our body lazy. So even actions, whatever we do, is constantly attracting this. So the secret doctrine is proposing a view of the universe in which we are connected to all the universal forces around. Each action, each word, thought is evoking these universal forces. Every time we act, the whole universe is acting through us. Now she says in Sanskrit, as well as in the Hebrew and all other alphabets, every letter has its occult meaning and its rationale. It is a cause and an effect of a preceding cause. You see Nidana again. And a combination of these very often produces the most magical effects. The vowels, especially, contain the most occult and formidable potencies. The mantras, esoterically magical rather than religious, are chanted by the Brahmins. So she says that, as we were saying, words evoke forces, entities, and she says that the vowels are especially potent. You see, for example, the word that we mentioned for the logos, oeaohu, is full of vowels. She says, as we saw in the previous series, this is a very powerful word, but it is given publicly in a book because without knowing how to pronounce it, then no really effect will be produced. If a person knows how to pronounce that word, with what intonation and in what way, then very powerful effects can be produced. So the mantras are regularly are these kind of magical sentences which produce effects on the external plane. Then Blavatsky, or the shloka, goes on, the sparks of the seven are subject to and the servants of the first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and the seventh of the seven. And she explains, to this hierarchy corresponds the actual types into which humanity may be divided. For humanity as a whole is in reality a materialized, though as yet imperfect, expression of this hierarchy. So the idea here in the esoteric view is that the emanation of all these different hierarchies is not something that happens outside, like an emanation where something is sent out outside of the source of the emanation. Rather, the emanations happen inside the field of consciousness of that which is emanating. So, for example, a hierarchy of beings there is the head of the hierarchy, let's say, and within the field of consciousness of this hierarchy are emanated all the different levels of beings, of celestial beings of that hierarchy. So each emanation is contained within the source of the emanation. In a sense, we could say that it's similar to our cells. The cells in our bodies are within our field of consciousness, and our consciousness affects the cells, and the activity of the cells also affect our consciousness. So in a similar way, human beings are an emanation of this chain of beings, and we are cells within this hierarchy of beings. That is what being the subject or the servant means. From a certain point of view, our cells are our servants, in the sense that they are undergoing their own evolution, but at the same time, they serve as a vehicle of consciousness for us. Now, in her esoteric instructions, Madame Blavatsky gave an example of this in connection to human beings. Since in this stanza we are talking about the creation of the gods or celestial beings, we can interpret this idea of the sparks within these 7 hierarchies and within the first, second, third, fourth, etc. of the 7. We can interpret that in a universal sense, talking about the emanation of the different hierarchies of beings. But the same happens if we look at this from the point of view of a human being. So we have 49 divisions here. We have the 7 main hierarchies and the 7 divisions within each one of these. In the esoteric instructions, Blavatsky designed this particular graphic to illustrate how the principles in a human being are connected to the hierarchies, to these celestial hierarchies. So she says each one of these circles, 1, 2, 3, 4, represent one of the 7 hierarchies of beings. Now she says each hierarchy has a particular color. So the first one has this color, is a kind of violet. And you can identify because that color is bigger in the diagram. Then the second one, for example, is the blue hierarchy. And the third one is this light blue hierarchy. This is like, these are different colors for the different principles, and so on. The idea is that in the first hierarchy, for example, the violet hierarchy, the background of that hierarchy would be, this is just a diagram, it's not that they are violet, of course, but this is just to put in the form of a diagram. So the way to visualize this would be to have a circle that is violet, and within that circle to have the 7 colors. So all the colors are tainted, if we want to put it that way, or are behind, all the colors are on top of the violet. So they always have a certain violet quality. And the violet of the violet hierarchy will be the purest expression of that hierarchy. So if we come to the second one, then the whole circle would be blue. And then we have the 7 colors that are on top of the blue. So the 7 colors will be bluish, as opposed to the violet taint of the previous one. So the idea is that each of the hierarchies contains all the other hierarchies, all the 7 colors, but one is more predominant in each of these. Now she says that our human principles derive from that sub-hierarchy, which is the representative of the hierarchy as a whole. So if we have the violet hierarchy, which is the one, the first sub-hierarchy, the first of the first, which is this violet, that is the source of our etheric double. The violet represents the etheric double. Then the second violet that we have here is the blue hierarchy. The second hierarchy is the blue hierarchy. And the second sub-hierarchy of the blue will be the source of the higher manas. This deep blue represents higher manas. And so on with all the hierarchies. So you can see how all our principles are emanations from the 7 hierarchies of being. And therefore, the powers of each of the celestial hierarchies are within us. As a reflection, they have a smaller range of action, but they, just like, for example, in the way that the celestial hierarchies, using the power of thought, they create a planet, so to say, then in the same way, our power of thought may not be so powerful to create a planet, but we do create our own world, as I explained earlier. So we have all the same powers that the hierarchies, the celestial hierarchies have, as a reflection in a smaller degree. And as I said, mentioned in the first class, what an adept, an occultist does is first to align his or her own nature to the universal nature so that none of these powers could be used in a selfish way, and then awaken these powers to the full potential that is possible in human beings, which is far more than normal humanity has developed at the moment. So that is for the idea of consciousness within consciousness, that is the universe. Then the sparks, which are within the first, second, and third of the seven, the sparks are the monads, the divine sparks, either of human beings or of lower hierarchies, according to in what context we are talking about. And then she says, or the shloka says, these sparks are called spheres, triangles, cubes, lines, and modelers, for thus stand the eternal nidana, chain of causation, the oi ha ho, the permutation of oea ohu. Blavatsky explains that this second part of the shloka can be interpreted to describe the process of building of the cosmos that the hierarchies of beings, of celestial beings, are in charge of. So she says, next we see cosmic matter scattering and forming itself into elements, grouped into the mystic four within the fifth element. Fifth element, that is the ether, the lining of Akasha, or the mother of cosmos. So Akasha is a very high principle, the matter, the substance, the spiritual substance that is at the level of the logos. And the ether is the reflection of that Akasha on the physical plane. So the idea is that these spheres, triangles, cubes, lines, these are expressions of how matter differentiates. Blavatsky says dots, lines, triangles, cubes, circles, and finally spheres. Nature geometrizes universally in all her manifestations, not only in the primordial substance, but also in the manifested matter of our phenomenal plane. And in a conversation she had with students, she says that we can see this, for example, in the snowflakes. When you look at them in a microscope, you can see all these different forms. You can see how the process of crystallization involves many of these different stages. They may begin as a sphere and then change in triangles or cubes, etc. So basically what she's saying is that the shloka is talking about the differentiation of matter. Now in science, it is very important to know about this in order to know how crystals will shape, how they are going to work. According to the different atoms that compose a substance, will be the form of the crystal, which may be a triangle or a pyramid or maybe a cube. So all these things are important to know in science when you start manipulating the molecular aspect of matter, and they are also important for the occultist. Of course, the shloka doesn't go into many details about this. Now, there is an instance of how the stanzas, the original stanzas explain, and their commentaries explain the process of evolution of matter. Now, see that this may seem to be out of place because we are talking about the generation of the gods, and now we are talking about the differentiation of matter. But we have to remember that matter is just the vehicle of expression of the celestial beings. In the esoteric philosophy, the physical plane, for example, is the body of a Dhyan Chohan. So we all living on the physical plane, we are living within the consciousness of this Dian Chohan. And all the physical laws of nature, of the physical plane, are part of the activity of this consciousness. So when the stanza is talking about the differentiation of matter, what it is actually talking about is the activity or the effects of the activity of the consciousness of all these different Dian Chohans. So Blavatsky quotes an ancient commentary, and she says, there is a note where she says that these are ancient commentaries attached with modern glossaries to the stanzas. She knew the Book of Xian, which is the source of these stanzas. She said the Book of Xian is one of the oldest books, or the oldest book in humanity. And there are some ancient commentaries that are attached to the stanzas. The original stanzas seem to be written in an ancient language, Sensar, but there are translations into more modern languages. We know Blavatsky mentions a Chinese translation, a Sanskrit translation, and so there are some ancient commentaries and there are some glossaries attached to all this for the study of the disciples. And she said that these glossaries to the stanzas are necessary since the commentaries in their symbolical language are usually as difficult to understand as the stanzas themselves. So even for HPV, these stanzas are not easy to understand because the language in the stanzas is symbolical, and as she says. And the reason for this is that the only way you can talk about something that can be applied universally to all different planes, levels, entities, is by talking symbolically. Science develops very specific language which can be applied only to that particular thing that they are explaining. The symbolic language, as we have been talking about or pointing out, can be applied to the manifestation of a logos or a monad or a human being on the physical plane, but that is only possible if one talks in a symbolic language that is not too specific, and yet it can be applied to all the different planes. So the commentary that Blavatsky brings says, the mother, remember we are talking about the voice, the feminine aspect of the logos, the mother is the fiery fish of life. She scatters her spawn, and the breath, motion, heats and quickens it. The grains of spawn are soon attracted to each other and form the curds in the ocean of space. The larger lumps coalesce and receive new spawn in fiery dots, triangles and cubes, which ripen, and at the appointed time some of the lumps detach themselves and assume spheroidal form, after which motion the breath becomes the whirlwind and sets them into rotation. Well, this is an explanation for the generation of a planet, for example. And with what we know today of the process of planet formation, we can see some resemblances with this. Of course, science doesn't know exactly how planet formation happens. Now with the discovery of Pluto, for example, they see a lot of features in Pluto that do not fit within the regular theory of planet formation. So science doesn't know quite well how this happens, but the general idea fits this in some ways if you know how to read it. Just to give a little, to put it in a little clearer way, these are the processes that are described in this commentary. So there are grains of spawn which scatter. So we may think of those as atoms or even subatomic particles. The first thing that happens is that they scatter. Now motion activates them. So in some way, when they scatter, they are latent, and then motion makes them fall within the law of attraction and repulsion. So the motion activates them, and then these particles begin to attract each other and form these curves to form certain structures. Now these primary structures then begin to coalesce and form larger lumps. Now, once that happens, new spawn, fiery dots, triangles, and cubes begin to be added to this, and there is a process of ripening. Now, as this ripens, there is a detachment, and it gets into a spheroidal form. And then the action of law, there is a part in the commentary where it says here, let me see. Yeah, not in this part, but there is another part of the commentary that says, then law number, and there are 3 stars, which Blavatsky didn't put the number, comes into play and turns that motion that is not in any particular direction, turns it into a whirlwind and sets these spheroidal forms in rotation. So with this kind of explanation is a symbolical explanation. It's a way to talk about how planets are formed, how they begin to rotate, how they, from the nebula, which is this matter at the beginning, they start to be attracted and to generate a quite similar process to what this stanza is saying. Now Blavatsky says motion is eternal in the unmanifested and periodical in the manifested plane, says an occult teaching. It is when heat caused by the descent of the flame into primordial matter causes its particles to move, with motion becomes whirlwind. And this will be important in the next stanza that we will begin to see in our next class, because this whirlwind is Fohat, is this cosmic energy that has that particular kind of motion. So we are going to see that later. That is the end of the Shloka 4. That was the easy Shloka here. Now we come to the difficult one. Number 5 says, the eternal Nidana, which is darkness, the boundless or the no number, Adi Nidana Swabhavat, the circle, Blavatsky adds, is for X is an unknown quality. And then it says 1, the Adi Sanat, the number, for he is 1. 2, the voice of the word, Swabhavat, the numbers, for he is 1 and 9. 3, the formless square, Arupa, which means formless. And these 3, enclosed within the boundless circle, are the sacred 4, and the 10 are the Arupa universe, or the subjective or formless universe. Then come the suns, the 7 fighters, the 1, the 8 left out, and his breath, which is the light maker, in Sanskrit, Bhaskara. So basically here there is a summary again of this Nidana, of this chain of causations. First is the circle, the no number, darkness, this is the absolute. Then we have the number 1, which is called here Adi Sanat. Adi means the highest. Then so this Adi Sanat, the number, may be seen as the divine thought that we were talking about, the unmanifested logos. Then we have the voice which is the feminine aspect of the logos, Swabhavat, the numbers. Now Swabhavat is the father mother. So here there is the voice of the word, which is the feminine aspect, and then Swabhavat is more the synthesis of feminine and masculine. For he is 1 and 9. We will see the explanations of this. I'm just giving you a general idea. And then the formless square is the third element, because we have these 1, 2, 3, these three which are enclosed in the first principle in the circle, and they are the sacred four elements. So let's see this, how Blavatsky puts it. 1. The Adi Sanat, the number for he is 1. Adi Sanat, translated literally, is the first or primeval ancient, because Adi is highest or the first, Sanat is the ancient, which name identifies the Kabbalistic ancient of the days and the holy aged. In Kabbalah is the Sephirah and Adam Kadmon, with Brahma, the creator, also called Sanat among his other names and deities. So here Blavatsky is interpreting the Adi Sanat, the number for his 1, more as the manifested logos, because Brahma is the manifested logos. So you see here again, you can interpret the 1 in different ways according to on what plane you are looking at this. If you are looking at this on the highest plane of the absolute, then the 1 will be the unmanifested logos. Then on the plane of manifestation, the 1 will be Brahma, what we call the third logos. Then the second, the voice of the word, Swabhavat, the numbers, for he is 1 and 9. Swabhavat is the mystic essence, the plastic root of physical nature. Numbers when manifested, the number in its unity of substance on the highest plane, the Kabbalistic archetypal world. So Swabhavat is the idea of the one substance from which all the different planes come, the differentiation of matter. So he is the number, like the one element when non-manifested, and then all the elements, the numbers, when manifested. So Swabhavat is the 1 and the 9, because as we talked in the previous class, the 10 talks about the totality of it. So in its unmanifested aspect is the one element behind everything, or actually when no manifestation is still developed, it is just the one element. And then as manifestation proceeds, Swabhavat is all the elements, all the differentiation. So the Orientalists, Blavatsky says, explain the term as meaning the universal plastic matter diffused through space. But the occultists identify it with the Father-Mother on the mystical plane. So then Blavatsky explains he is 1 and 9, which makes 10, or the perfect number applied to the creator, which is the name given to the totality of creators, blended by the monotheists into one. Remember when we talked about the word has been the collectivity of all the army of the voice and the hosts of the logos. So she says the 1 and the 9, the 10 is the decade, which contains in itself all the universe. Then the formless square, which is the third principle. So we saw the first darkness, the boundless circle, then the one which is the logos, whether unmanifested or manifested according to the context. Then we have the Father-Mother, or the later on will be the mother. From the Father-Mother there is the Father-Mother is where the logos is polarized, and then that separates into the father and the mother, which interact and give birth to the son. So we have the Father-Mother, and now third, we have the third element, which is the formless square. And these three enclosed within the circle are the sacred four. So the first triad that we talked about within the circle forms the tetractys. We mentioned the tetractys in our previous class, which are the sacred four, which is the source for all differentiation in the universe. Remember, So the square within the circle, sometimes this is a symbol for the sacred four, the square within a circle, being the most potent of all the magical figures. Now here there is a little glitch here in which the third element, she talks about the formless square as the third element, and then she says these three enclosed within the circle are the sacred four, but the square is already four. So I don't know if that is, Blavatsky explains in the commentaries that what we have in the stanzas in the Secret Doctrine is an abridgment of what is in the book of Sian. She says, I skipped many shlokas and even complete stanzas because it would be completely beyond our understanding. So she gave us some of the shlokas, some of the stanzas, for us to have an idea, and also remember, as we talked in the first series, trying to work out with these abstract concepts is a way to develop a certain ability in our mind, which can be very useful as we grow in the direction of becoming co-workers of nature. So it may be that she skipped something here. To my mind, there should be here a third element, which would be probably the mother, if you ask me. We have the one, we have the father, mother, and then there is the differentiation. So it could be the mother, or it could be the energy that comes like Fohat. And then those three elements enclosed in the circle would be the sacred four. But when you study the Secret Doctrine, there will be many little things like this. The purpose of the study of the Secret Doctrine is not necessarily to understand every single term, because that is not possible. Blavatsky said, there is not enough information to explain every term. That was not the aim of the writing of the Secret Doctrine, but to have the general ideas behind, to begin to understand the general processes. Then the second part of this shloka says, then come the sons, the seven fighters, the one, the eighth left out. So there are sons which are 8, 7 fighters, and one that is left out. And she says the one rejected is the son of our system. And she refers to a Hindu allegory in which Aditi, which is the mother goddess, had 8 sons, and then she rejects one of them and she protects the other 7. And Blavatsky says this one rejected is the son of our system. So this, again, can be interpreted on different levels. Blavatsky is going to explain the astronomical interpretation of this. Remember, I mentioned there are several keys to interpret the stanzas or the shlokas. It can be interpreted spiritually, psychologically, astronomically. This is how she's going to explain it. And she says the occult doctrine rejects the hypothesis born out of the nebular theory of the 19th century that the 7 great planets have evolved from the sun's central mass. So at the time, what science said was that the sun was formed, and from the sun came the 7 planets, or the 8 planets that they knew about. Blavatsky says the occult doctrine rejects that view. And she says the first condensation of cosmic matter, because the idea is that there is a nebula, and then that condenses in the center in which is going to be the sun. So Blavatsky says the first condensation of cosmic matter, of course, took place about a central nucleus. So far is correct, she says. Its parent, the sun, the central nucleus, that is the sun. But our sun, it is taught, merely detached itself earlier than all the others as the rotating mass contracted, and is the elder and bigger brother not the father of the planets. So what she's saying is what science now says. There is this rotating mass of cosmic matter, and then part of that matter begins to condensate in the center, and then part of the other matter begins to condensate in rings around the center, which eventually form the planets. So the sun is as Blavatsky says, the first to be produced, and then the planets are produced later, but not from the sun. So they are all brothers, the sun being the eldest. So this is an example of, another example of the secret doctrine, talking about something or contradicting the science of the time, which later on has been proved right by science. So you see, she says there is a whole poem of the pre-genetic battles fought by the growing planets before the final formation of the cosmos. Before the final formation, the sun, we are taught, drew into the depths of its mass all the cosmic vitality he could, threatening to engulf his weaker brothers before the law of attraction and repulsion was finally adjusted. So what she's saying here is that when the sun was forming, there was the danger that the sun would draw into its mass all the planets that were also in formation. So there is a law that came in between that is probably related to the law of attraction and repulsion, and we don't know, she doesn't mention, but a law came into operation to set the sun apart from the planets and thus protect the planets. This is why it is said that the sun is the eighth left out. There is something that had to happen so that the sun would not swallow all the planets. So this shloka can be interpreted as that point in the process of cosmic formation. To protect the planet, the sun was left out of a certain field of influence. And then the last part of this shloka says, and his breath, which is the light maker, Bhaskara. So the breath of the sun is the light maker, which that is quite obvious. Now, Blavatsky says not only the sun is Bhaskara, the light maker, but all the 7 planets. She says the breath of all the 7 is said to be light making, because they, the planets, were all comets and suns in their origin. So this is something that seems to be, strange, that all the planets were comets and suns in their origin. But what Blavatsky is saying here is more or less what science says now. You have a star, a sun, that when that sun explodes, in a supernova, then all these fragments from the sun are shoot out into space, like if they were comets, and in their travel through space, they gather more and more material, and eventually they are attracted to a nebula where a planet is going to be formed. So this is what the Blavatsky, before this theory was known to science, what Blavatsky is talking about here. So they evolved into manvantaric life from primeval chaos, now the noumenon or the cause of the nebula, by aggregation and accumulation of the primary differentiations of the eternal matter. So as they travel, there is this aggregation and accumulation of different matter that they encounter. According to the beautiful expression of the commentary, thus the sons of light clothed themselves in the fabric of darkness. So the sun, S-U-N, who was bright, now it goes through the universe and gathers, or the fragments gather around this matter, the fabric of darkness. And the final shloka of this stanza says, the second 7, who are the Lipika, produced by the 3, word, voice, and spirit. So this comes from the 5th shloka. The 5th shloka is talking about this this particular nidana or chain of causation. The absolute, the one, then Swabhavat, the father, mother, then the third principle. These three enclosed in the absolute are the sacred four, and then comes the first emanation, and then the second seven. The second seven who are the Lipika. And Blavatsky explains, the Lipika form the word lipi, writing, means from the word lipi, writing, means literally describes. Mystically, these divine beings are connected with karma, the law of retribution, for they are the recorders or analysts who impress on the to us invisible tablets of the astral light, the great picture gallery of eternity, a faithful record of every act and even thought of man, of all that was, is, and ever will be in the phenomenal universe. As said in Isis Unveiled, the book that she wrote previously, this divine and unseen canvas is the book of life. You know, in the Bible there is a reference to the book of life and these recording angels that write down the actions of people. Well, these are known as lipikas with the Sanskrit term, and these are the lords of karma, those intelligences behind the operation of karma in the universe. Every thought, every action is impressed in the matter of the different planes. On the astral plane are the Blavatsky would call them astral tablets of the astral light. Higher than that, we have the Akashic records. So all these actions are impressed in the universe, in the book of life, in this canvas, and they are worked out, guided by intelligences, which are the lords of karma. Now, when we talk about this, we have to remember again that the lords of karma are not like human beings. All this language is allegorical, so don't think that there are 4 or 7 human beings up there writing down and directing things. But the point here is that the operation of karma has an intelligence behind, has a divine wisdom behind, which is allegorically said to be this lipika. So that is the end of the stanza 4. We are going to explore in our next class next week the beginning of stanza 5.